Good afternoon. Hope you're all well. Thank you for joining us, or thank you for watching this back live, whichever one it is. Sorry, not watching it back live, watching back the rerun afterwards. Yeah, hope you're all well, hope you're having a good week. Just go through our checks. This back live, whichever one. Yeah, there we are, all ready to go. Starting on the scroll saw, and what are we making today? We're making a Celtic themed clock. This is the simpler version of a Celtic clock that I make. Hopefully I'm going to be able to see any comments. Yeah, one of the first things I'm going to just explain very quickly. I bought some glasses. I use the visor, but I bought some sort of goggle glasses as well to put under the visor. What it is, last week I actually had a burst blood vessel came up. Oh, hello there. Hello to the carver. And everyone as well tuning in. Congratulations to the carver. Past 1,000 views on YouTube and 50 subscribers. So hitting some milestones. So congratulations for that one. The first 1,000 of many, many thousand views, we hope. But yeah, always worth celebrating milestones, and check out the carver's channel if you get a chance. Yeah, I was going to say, I actually burst blood vessel. It was pushing too hard when I was training, but got me thinking about sort of eye protection. I noticed that I get a lot of dust after I've been on the scroll saw in and around my eyes, so I thought I'm going to put the goggles on as well as the mask and see if it just protects a little bit. We got this one here. We've got a piece of Iroko, and then on top of that we got a piece of mahogany. Thanks, mate. No, you're welcome. Yeah, good progress, good work, and hopefully it'll keep growing and growing and growing. So what I'm going to do is the same process as always. We've sanded it flat on the back. We've got it for stack cutting, so I super glued 2 layers together. I'm going to do all the pierce work. This one here, there's probably more carving going to be in today's demonstration, which I know will please the carver. Hello there, James. Thanks for joining us. Great to have you with us as well. Hope you'll enjoy the live stream. So I'm going to start off. I'll cut out this piece here that afterwards will be used for putting the clock into. We've then got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pierce work holes. We cut the surround, and then we're over onto the workbench to do the carving. So it's as simple as that, he says. Famous last words. We've pre-drilled all of these holes, so that's all ready for doing that Celtic weave. A nice little project, a unique design again that we've done, and yeah, that's what we're going to demonstrate. Any questions as we go along the way, feel free to ask them. Any thoughts you want to share, any ideas, yeah, feel free to share them. It's always great to hear what's going to be said. One of the topics that I want to look at today, so if you want to put any comments on this subject straight off, is designing. And I'm going to specifically talk about our designing process. So if you've got any thoughts, you want to share any ideas on your own designing process, let us know. But that is an area that I'm going to be focusing on, is our designing process in between cutting out. Look at that, force of habit. I bought goggles to use, and the first thing I'm going to have to do is to put the goggles on first, and I put the mask on first. So it's a false start. Try again. Goggles, glasses, it's getting more complicated. Okay, so that's the inside, that's where the clock will go into. Normally, I am working to the inside of the line, or just taking the outside edge of the line out. That one there, I was actually working to the outside of the line because the clock movements we use, they have little prongs that stick out. So if it's a little bit bigger, as long as the clock fits into the insert, if it's too big, yeah, it won't fit in properly. But if it's a little bit bigger, those metal prongs will hold it in position. Same as I seem to do every week, I've left that plate on the bottom of the scroll saw, so we're just going to take that out again. Just allows the wood that we're cutting away, the scrap wood, just to fall away more easily. Just makes life easier for us as we're scroll sawing. Oh, a few comments there from the carver. Oh, hello there, Daniel, as well. Let's have a little look. Right, we got my goal is to try for an original design. Yes, spot on. I'll seek inspiration from other sources, but as far as the final layout and execution goes, I think that should be my best effort. Yeah, brilliant. Similar to ourselves. My smaller pieces get caught in the central cover. Any ideas? Should I make another top board? So, are you sort of getting things? Are you struggling because they're small? Are they getting caught in and around the saw blade and stuff like that? Possibly need a little bit more explanation on what you mean by that. Basically, what I tend to do with really small pieces, I mean, we make some tiny little, you know, there's a little outline that we cut there. What I would do, I would mark them out. I would mark out, say, 4 or 5 projects. Let's say we're making jewellery. So if we're making a pendant, I would mark out, actually mark out, say, 4 or 5 pendants on a larger piece of wood. And that means that it's easier to control. It's more straightforward to cut out because your hands are further away from the cutting, the cutting edge, the blades. And because it's a bigger piece of wood, it's far easier to control. If you've got really tiny little bits of wood, yeah, that can be really quite challenging. Might need a little bit more explanation if that's not what you mean by it. But yeah, basically that's what we do, is to mark out small projects on larger pieces of wood, but cut out several. So for instance, you know, a piece of wood like this, that's where, when I've cut this project out, if you look, I've cut the Iroko back bigger than the mahogany because I've got a little bit more room. I can get my hands well away from the blade. I can get them in a comfortable position, and I can control the project as I'm cutting out far more easily. If you try and cut out small projects on small pieces of wood, it can be quite complicated, and it can be quite off-putting if it starts jumping around, bouncing around. But if that's not what you mean, feel free to explain again, and yeah, we'll do our best to explain what you say. The question here, did my smallest pieces get caught in the central cover? Any ideas? Should I make another top boards? You understand? Do you follow that?
I do.
Is that where you're making sort of small, like where we'd be making the jewellery? Is it where you get it caught?
I mean, all you can do is try and leave a handling piece until the very last moment.
Mark it out on a bigger piece of wood, basically, isn't it?
Well, I can understand they want to use their offcuts.
But what I that's what I tend to do, isn't it? Is I mark out 4 or 5.
Could you as well take that off and show what you sometimes remove?
Well, basically
that centre piece.
Well, no, I've just done that because mine to get that wood to clear away. I've just done that. This is the other thing as well. What you can do, let's say you've got a really nice piece, like this is a piece of yew. If you've got a really nice piece of yew, and for instance, but it's only a really small piece, what I would do if I want to make a project out of that, and it's a really small piece of wood, is to super glue it onto a much larger piece of wood. So let's say, even if you've got a cheap piece of softwood, it won't make any difference. Just put it on a larger piece of wood.
Yeah, but if you put it on a larger piece of wood, you can cut 2 out, which is more economical then anyway.
Absolutely. But you can put it on a larger piece of wood, so it makes it far easier for you to cut out. That's where it starts to get difficult, is when you've got really small pieces. And it starts bouncing and jumping about. That can be a bit of a nightmare.
And that's where we're fortunate. Because
I mean the hole where the pieces drop down, the cover you just removed. Right. So yeah, literally, if it's a really small piece, that cover, what we do, right, ourselves, if we're working on small projects.
Where is that other piece though?
So basically, if I'm doing pierce work, and it is sort of fine pierce work, I find it easier if you can get the pieces of wood, the small bits, to fall down the hole out the way. If you're making small projects and you're having issues making...
You've got to put the third piece on there.
Small... What's that, sorry?
You'd have to put the third piece back on.
Well, yeah, if you were working on a really small piece of wood, you'd have to have that on there, unless you put it on a larger piece of wood, on a backing board... And then it doesn't matter. And I actually find when I'm working on really small, delicate projects, it's easier still to remove that
and by sticking
it onto a larger piece of wood.
You're making 2 or even 3 pieces.
You get 2 out of it. And what you can do, you can mark out, say, let's say we're working on Celtic jewellery, Celtic crosses, for instance. You can mark out, say, a Celtic cross, a Celtic heart, which my popular video that has been widely recognised as it has came out looking like a pretzel, and you can mark out things like that together, and you can cut out several items at the same time. So that's the method that I would use, because when I was doing it, I would try to cut out one small item from a small piece of wood, and it was really hard to control, and then it would start bouncing around and things like that, and it gets difficult. And then I just stopped doing that and marked it out with a bigger backing board, making it easier to grip. And if you're looking for super glue, check the link in the description of our videos. You can get a 10% discount on Starbond. But that's the method I use. But yeah, try it. See how you get on. Yeah, that's a really good idea. We'll start with that. Yeah, try it. See if it works for you. It certainly works for us. Right, we will continue now.
The most important discovery for us today is this stack cutting.
Yeah, I mean...
And for the Chinese that are listening,
well, I mean, the snack cutting, what I would say...
It's helping us to compete.
Well, what I would say with...
imports.
Yeah, I mean, basically, most of the people who, support us, I would think are people in a similar position who are making, things and trying to compete with CNC computers and things like that. And what I would say with the stack cutting is it just allows us to be that much more productive in what we do, and it certainly gives us a fighting chance against some of the methods of production.
Can I also say that over here at the moment, the oil companies, the petrol, all the government, the whole shooting match are taking advantage of these of the increase apparently, the shortage then of petrol and materials. It's being taken advantage of, and we haven't put our prices up. We've tried to keep it with this stack cutting, and it's really pathetic with the government and the AMs, the people in Parliament. They're just letting people suffer, I'm afraid. And they say, they're washing their hands of it, and they say, "Oh, we can't do anything about it."
Right. Before we get our live stream shut down, I'm gonna carry on cutting this one, and we're also, I've been saying to everyone, we're gonna focus a little bit on designing, and one of the things I'm gonna just discuss as well is why we still hand draw everything. So I'm gonna carry on cutting this one out.
Yeah. Okay. I'll have my rant later.
What?
I'll finish my rant.
So I always stop and I just check in on the back, see if it's cutting cleanly. Last week I was cutting a bit at an angle, so check if it's cutting square, just if the blade needs changing, anything like that. What I was going to come back to actually, designing, yeah. I'll check if there's any comments we've lost. Let's have a little look. Following on from Thomas Woodcarver's rant. Awesome, thanks for the tips. Just have to say, since I've been watching your channel, my inspiration went through the roof. Fantastic. Brilliant, really glad to hear it. Thanks for the positive feedback on that. Really, yeah, we really appreciate it. The carver, yeah. And we get Eddie. He's on his soapbox. I sent him in the other room on the scroll saw now, so he's off on there, but he'll be back later to continue his rant. Yeah, what I was going to say was, when it comes to designing, I'd like Dad to give his input in designing, but what I was going to say, I know there's loads of different methods you can use for designing, and I've used everything over the years, from using my own photos to using things like Photoshop, taking images off Google and things like that. And that's a method I find really useful, is to take an original image that somebody's done, but I don't tend to just stick to their image. I use it to sort of take inspiration and then I adapt it. But basically what I was going to say with it, the main point I was going to get at, is that I still end up hand drawing all of my designs. And I was thinking, well, why do I still do that? Because I know, there's things like Photoshop, there's Corel Paint, there's Paint Shop Pro, there's all sorts of, the editing programs and things like that there to help you. But one of the reasons that I stick to hand drawing everything that I do, so this has all been, hand drawn, is because as you're drawing it out, I don't know whether it's because if you're doing something through a computer screen, in some ways it puts a bit of distance, but when you're hand drawing it, because you're sort of physically doing that on a piece of paper, I think in your head you can work out any of the problems and the issues as you go about the process of designing. So I always think that it's good to have that paper in front of you. I don't know, for me, there's something slightly different between a computer screen and a pencil and paper. And I can work out a lot of the issues quite often that I'm probably going to get by drawing it out on paper. So that's the main thing I wanted to share with everyone then, is that idea that by doing it on paper, and also as well over the years, this helped me improve my eye and to improve the way that I do things. So that's just a few thoughts when it comes to the designing, because it is an important part. If you can get it right, designing, you can create some really unique pieces. And you may have noticed through the channel that we do enjoy Celtic designs as the basis of what we do. Not always, but quite often. So far, so good. Right. Have we missed any comments there? No, I think this is all okay at the moment. Good, good. Right, now what we're going to do from here, we're going to cut out that surround, and then we're going to go across and we're going to work on the hand carving. So that's the main bulk of this project. Yeah, when I was talking as well about the designing and problem solving, one of the sort of things you've got to work out for this one is this centerpiece has to be held inside the Celtic weave. And so you've got to work out when you're designing a project like this, a couple of things. How do we hold it? So we work out how we can, as long as we got it touching, we got it touching in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places. So that gives it enough strength to be held there. You've got the separation because we've cut out these bits using the scroll saw. We then have to work out how we can get the clock movement in, and also how we can show the whole weave. So you can't have it tight to the gap of the clock. Otherwise, part of the weave would be going behind the clock and you wouldn't be able to see it. So that's why we have this piece, this ring around here. So the clock movement fits in, and then you have this behind the clock face. So that's what you're working out as you're designing it. As I said earlier as well, any questions, let us know, and we do our best to answer.
That's the one I'm doing.
What's that?
Just to show people, that's the one I'm doing.
I'm checking to see if you brought a box with you, yeah?
No.
There we are.
A soapbox, you mean?
They all know what I mean.
Well, it does make me very cross because we have a Welsh government at the moment that's acting like a...
I think there's a lot of similarities throughout the world, to be honest with you. So what were you showing here?
Well, just showing again, a slightly different way. I've screwed these together.
Yeah, so another technique of stack cutting that we use is to screw projects together. I think people would be quite interested as well to know, because we were talking about designing. What's your own approach? So as I'm gonna move, do you want to explain your own process when it comes to designing? A few thoughts from yourself on designing and what you can do, how people can get into designing their own projects. And I'm going to move the camera, as you explain, I'm going to move the camera across to the workbench and do some camping.
Okay. Well, for designing, you want me to take my mask off, do you? Okay.
Yeah, that's better.
He muzzles me, see.
There we are.
He puts a muzzle on me so I don't say anything that he doesn't want people to hear.
Here we are. So for
designing,
what would you suggest?
well, it's very interesting, really, because we've probably refused a number of jobs recently. Okay,
Yeah.
and
Not
that's
refused, but we haven't taken on.
yeah, but also, you know, when you're self-employed and you have a request for you know, a spoon or a job that somebody wants. They want a dragon, they want a lion, and by the way, we'd like an elephant carved on there, and could you do a bunch of grapes, please? Oh, great. Oh, and the budget is £50. Oh, so what I'm saying is, you know, more and more you've got to be a psychologist working out.
Quite often there's people put quite a few demands when it comes to the designing, and it can become quite restrictive then for us.
In fairness, you have the other element that people say, look, I've got a budget of £100 or I've got a budget of £200. Can you work within that? And this is what I like. It's just that it's been a little bit sort of frustrating that we've had some weird sort of requests.
We do have.
That's the point I was just trying to make. Sorry, is not to be afraid, especially, you know, when I first started off 45 years ago, I would take on just about any job.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is that for anybody sort of starting off, don't think you have to take every single job on.
No, that's right.
Have a look at it. Don't commit yourself. Say, oh, I'll have a look. I'll see what I can come up with. But because in this area, there are very few people now that will make, for argument's sake, a shield for a presentation with sort of carved letters on it or something like that. There's a lot of jobs out there.
The carver says for £200 you give it a go.
You know, so it is, you know, well, I mean, a lady, you know, it's being honest. I mean, a lady came in this morning, and this is the sort of thing Dave did. I brought him a spoon across, and I said, oh, we want 2 names on this, please. It was a lovely bit of wood, it was a bit of yew, and it was priced at £57.50.
Price is £57.50, yeah, and I looked at it and I knew the design, and I told her straight away. I said there's a mistake with that, because it had been priced £10 too expensive.
We stuck
so-
the wrong label on it, I guess.
Yeah, so
You know.
but she would have bought it at that
Exactly.
price, but I wouldn't sell it at that price because
That's right.
it wouldn't be fair.
When you're being fair and honest in business, and
Yeah.
then you've got politicians who are as bent as S hooks.
I can see the soapbox creeping back.
But it is. You know, politicians, I mean, and the one we've got in office at the moment is as bent as an S hook. And it's so frustrating. So, you know, it causes me to have a blinking rant, I'm afraid.
Well, coming back to the designing,
I'm sorry, but I'm going back to my back room now.
there we are. This is why.
Have you shown them what I'm working on?
This is we've shown them that.
Okay.
Yeah. This is why Thomas.
I'm back on the dragon.
Thomas the woodcarver is going back to back of house there because.
And by the way, most of these politicians, they're solicitors or they've got degrees in law and all the rest of it. So if they're listening, they're probably thinking, how am I going to sue that snivelling dick down in West Wales?
Yeah, you do realise that the channel's in my name. And technically now they probably they come after me saying that technically he's a guest and you haven't kept him under control. So technically it's my fault. I was going to say when it comes to the designing, going back to that, now Thomas Woodcarver has left the room, and by the look of our audience, so's everybody else, except the carver, who's probably enjoying himself. I'll have a look on there. What's the final comment? Let's have a look. Being fair and honest puts us at a disadvantage, but you have the pleasure of being able to sleep at night. Spot on. When it comes to what I was originally talking about when it comes to the designing and that aspect of it, I think it's nicer if you can be involved in it. This is what I was trying to get Dad to explain, because it gives you that role that you're playing right from the start of the process to the finish. So for a project like this, for instance, I'm just looking at, I'm still here. Glad you're still with us. There we are. Thank you for sticking with us. It basically, it allows you that input in all of the process. And it allows you to create something then that is completely unique and original to yourself. So that was going to be my main focus of what we were looking at is how to give yourself the most input in what you're doing, and then as a result that gives you the maximum amount of enjoyment then from the end result that you produce. You may have noticed when we were cutting this one out, and as well when it comes to the carving, that it's carving quite nicely. It's quite a soft piece of mahogany. It wouldn't be the sort of highest quality mahogany. That's why I've chosen it to do this as opposed to making some of our love spoons, that sort of thing from. And then the other piece of wood that I've used, the other clock face, that one there, is a piece of Iroko, which again, quite soft for cutting out. Not the sort of best wood that we work in, but certainly works and carves quite nicely, quite respectably. I will show you as well, because my original plan was to make this from a beautiful piece of juniper. I will just try and find it. Yeah, there it is. So I marked all of this out. And when I went to, I basically prepared it all, went to stick the design on, and I thought, I just checked just to see if the wood sound. There's a big split running in it. I don't know if you can see that properly, but right down the middle of it, big horrible split in it. So it would have been a really nice piece if I'd have been able to have finished it in the juniper, but unfortunately, with that big old split, don't know if you can see it actually, did I get it on the screen properly? There, just running there. Unfortunately, that's not going to be able to do the job. So, better to get it happening at that stage, the early stage of the process, before you've actually started working on it, than to find out at a later stage. I know there are methods that you can use to rectify that in terms of stabilizing it with things like the different glues. But what I sort of thought when I saw it there, it's a bad split, that one. So what I'm going to do, I'll mark probably a piece of jewellery out on that side and a small project on the other side. So that'll go in, that'll sort of go in. We have a bag of wood there. We have a bag of odds and ends, that sort of thing. And we keep that, we sort of keep all the different woods. And then when I'm doing different projects, I go and have a look through the bag of wood that we got left over, and select the piece. Select the piece that's suitable. There we are. And going back to Thomas the Woodcarver, one of his great weaknesses is he doesn't really give his opinion. That's what we struggle with Thomas the Woodcarver. He's a bit reserved with his opinions. But something's rattled him today. But that's all it's part of the beauty of working with him, is you know that there's something always a brew when it comes to something that's he's seen or heard. There we are. He's always got a thought to share with everybody. I was all ready as well. I was ready to do. I was going to try and get a little bit more information out of him in terms of his own background, of how he got started with woodworking and wood carving. But he's gone back in the back room to think of his next political outburst. So what we're doing, just to explain as well the process of what's happening here, whilst I was explaining a few other things there. What we try to do is to create the effect where the Celtic weave goes over and under. So that's the sort of surround, that's the effect that we want to create, is that you've got a continuous weave and the whole Celtic knot weaves in and out. And it's on my Celtic things are always in, whatever it is, they're always right at the top of my favourite things to do, is Celtic designs, Celtic knots, anything to do with the Celts. I absolutely love it. And it's a fascinating thing. For instance, my wife now, she's actually, her family's, well, she's Spanish, but her his town is in the middle of La Mancha in central Spain. And the first time I went there, I thought, wow, why have I got a feeling like this? The Celts have been here, but this is in the middle of La Mancha. They wouldn't have got as far as this. Worked out, yeah, I was right. It's originally a Celtic settlement there. And so in some ways, much to our surprise, the Celts were indeed in that area. There was just something about the whole layout of it. I'm just going to check 2 seconds, because I've gone there and there and then there and there, but these ones I've gone the other way round, so I've got to remember to do that on the other side. What you're doing, see, is whatever you do on the one side, you're trying to replicate on the other side. So if you're joining us, I know we said we're scroll sawing. We've done the scroll sawing on this particular project, and now we're showing how we use our wood carving to sort of develop on what the scroll saw has done for us. So that the scroll saw gives us our basic outline on a project like this one. We do, if you know our channel, as most of you do, we do a lot of projects where we'll just use the scroll saw, but we do a lot more projects where we use a combination of the scroll saw and the hand carving. That's our sort of preferred method. A few comments there that I will just catch up on. Let's have a little look. Oh, the carver is part of the appeal for Thomas. That and his singing. Yeah, we get to sing in a bit. The man has earned the ability to give his thoughts whenever he would like. That age, I hope, to be sharp enough for the sake. The Celts got around. Yes, spot on. Yeah, Thomas the Woodcarver's certainly not shy. Although I don't think he's ever been particularly shy about giving his two penneth worth, as we would put it. So yeah, he's always pretty keen to share a view, and he certainly delivers his message with plenty of gusto. Perhaps I'll suggest to him to get into politics. We'll have Prime Minister Thomas the Woodcarver. Be good, that. He's got some strong views, and perhaps we get him working on the environment. He's got some ideas on that as well. Tree planting project. He'd have some good policies, I reckon. Get people making more things. Get people making stuff, you know, here in the UK or with yourselves in the US as well. Get more people enjoying creating, instead of, you know, all the stuff being brought in from far-flung places. You'd be an advocate for getting stuff made by ourselves. I reckon you get a few votes for that. Well, I got a feeling that he'd, at some stage, probably be asked to leave. They'd be telling him you're too opinionated for it. So you can see with what we've done most of the cuts that we've got going in the one direction. Are you coming back with an opinion?
Do you want me to work on this one?
What's that?
Do you want me to work on this one?
No, that's fine. We're finishing this
If you
one.
want more scroll sewing,
No, we're good there. We'll finish this one off for everybody to see.
I thought if you want some
we-
scroll sewing by a professional old man, like, you know.
Oh well, you'll have to show everyone some scroll sawing soon. I was going to ask you yourself now. If you take the mask off and you explain a little bit now. Tell everybody how did you get into woodworking first of all, and then also on top of that, how did you gravitate towards firstly wood carving and then scroll sawing?
Oh boys,
There we go.
that goes a long way back.
So what's your earliest memories then of woodworking? That's the first one.
I think from you know, without being sort of oh dear me, I had a hard time. It from a, you know, I can remember being given a Christmas present.
Yeah.
As a clockwork train. That's how far back I go.
Right.
A clockwork train, and then wanting to make like a track
Yeah.
for, you know, there was a little circle.
Right.
But then the next thing was, thought, you know, what if I make my own track out of maybe little bits of wood like matchsticks and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, from a very early age,
So how old would you have been?
Like Sammy,
Yeah.
he's 5.
Well, Sammy's got that about him where he'll come up with all these ideas and you look at it and you think, where on earth has he got that in his head to have created that? He'll create things that
That's right.
you wouldn't think of.
So of course, you know, you go to school and the basics. It's learning to read, and write, and you know, you get
so you
little
must
bits of smartly. You're given clay to mold something, and I'd be given this lovely sort of clay now to mold something, and the only thing I could ever make was a snake.
Right. Yeah.
A multicoloured snake.
Yeah.
You know.
But how old were you then when you say about the you said a train, was it?
Yeah.
How old would that be?
About 5-year-old, maybe 6-year-old, like, you know.
So it goes back as far as then.
Yeah, I think so. It's there. You know, you want to be able to you know, this train is just going round in the circle. The circle's only about two.
So did you have a go at doing something?
Oh yeah, you'd make little bits of wood and you'd stick matchsticks on there as a bit of like a railway with sleepers and that kind of thing. So you'd make your own kind of models then.
Yeah.
And then of course, what was popular, obviously I'm 73 now, but what was popular as a boy would be modelling, airfix modelling, where you'd be making aeroplanes, you'd be making boats, and then you'd paint them and all that kind of thing, mainly out of plastic. But it was it was a time where you had junior school in our country, and then you had an exam to decide whether you would go to a grammar school, being academic, or whether you would go to a secondary modern school then.
Yeah.
And the ridiculous, again, wonderful sort of politicians, they had the idea you either pass the 11 plus. So what's the opposite to pass? Oh, you fail the 11 plus. So at least 3/4 of the school, the junior school,
Didn't do any harm to Tom Jones.
exactly. But the majority failed. You were a failure at 11. Thanks a bunch.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because when you look at quite a lot of very, very successful people, they had sort of that experience, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah.
Because it's basically the odds will be stacked against
And
from
it
the
just,
start.
For a lot of people, you'd be your friends in school. Some would go to the grammar school. Some would then go to the secondary modern school. So you were branded as a failure.
So what was your earliest memories of wood carving?
Wow, wood carving, yeah. You wouldn't be allowed to have a knife,
Right.
because it was a sort of you have to be careful with a knife. I mean, you let your boys come in here and do a little bit of work with the chisels.
Yeah,
but
under supervision.
that's right. But you had to be careful with obviously with knives, and how you sort of control how the child is using it.
Well, that's why they are allowed to come in, is because they get to be taught how to do it properly.
Yeah. So you'd have different, as I say, you'd have clay, you'd be able to model it and all that kind of thing.
But actual wood carving, what's your first memories of that?
Ooh, I guess.
What's the first thing you carved?
I guess the spoon over. We used to have a very good magazine.
Right.
We had the Practical Woodworker and the Practical Woodworking.
Right.
And so there was a chap in there, Morris Woods. Wonder if anybody remembers the Practical Woodworking magazine with Morris Woods. I remember carving a hare, and that was on the instruction of this Morris Wood.
Yeah.
Although I was one of these unfortunate people that had failed the 11 plus, they did teach me to read.
Yeah.
Up in the secondary modern school, there were all sorts of things that we weren't allowed to do, because women, for instance, girls, then were separated from the boys, because the secondary modern boys, we were sort of in danger of doing things that we weren't supposed to do.
Yeah.
It's quite ironic and funny, really. Anyway, so you'd the first sort of things for carving was magazines like that, where
I'll throw it open to everyone as well. Be interesting to hear from people like the carver. What's your first carving? Because my first carvings. Do you remember? Well, here we are. You were here for it. Do you remember what my earliest carvings were?
Oh boys, no.
My first carving. First thing I remember making is at a very young age was a barometer,
barometer, sorry.
that was all it was all
Yeah.
bowed, and you'd abandoned it.
Yeah.
And I
An elm.
yeah, and I just had a little go and carried on with that. But then when I actually took carving more seriously, my first sort of earliest memories was doing key rings
Yeah.
and letter openers.
Yeah.
I mean, over the years, you must have made thousands and thousands
Well, I mean, the
of
thing
letter
is,
openers.
when I then failed the 11 plus and went to the secondary modern school,
Yeah,
it was what a challenge, you know. It was woodwork Monday morning,
yeah,
woodwork Wednesday afternoon,
Yeah.
technical drawing Thursday afternoon. So it was great. It was really good for me.
Yeah.
I can also remember in English lessons,
Yeah.
I'd be given a poster to do, for the advertising for teachers, I'd be advertising.
So you'd be doing design with that? You'd be doing like a graphic design type thing then? would
Yeah,
it?
when people were reading the books in the English, they'd have me sitting at the back doing
Doing the poster?
artwork for posters and that.
Yeah.
So
But this is what I was talking about, because we're probably a bit of a throwback in terms of designing now, because somebody mentioned about designs and things like that, and free designs that are available. With the one they mentioned last week was Steve Good, and I actually saw had a look at then on the back of that of one of Steve Good's videos, and he uses a program called Corel Paint, I think it's called, because we had the photo editor called Corel Paint Shop Pro, but he does it on the computer. And I was saying, we still hand draw all of ours on paper. Yeah. And one of the big reasons for that is because I find my mind is more in tuned when I'm doing it using pencil and paper to work out the problems as you're going along, work out the issues. Yeah. As I find, if I'm trying to do it on a computer, I feel a little bit distant from what I'm doing, basically. Yeah. So then how did you then get into scroll sawing? How did that come about?
Well, it was finding, you did, as I say, those were the subjects I did in the secondary modern school.
Did you do any scroll sawing in school?
No, the scroll saw then, you had the band saw.
Yeah. You had access to that in school?
And you'd have a coping saw.
Yeah.
And a fret saw.
Yeah.
But I didn't come across the scroll saw. When was my first? The scroll saw was.
Well, you had a foot pedal controlled one, I remember, years ago upstairs.
Yeah. And I'd make my spoons. I would use the coping saw or a little.
I remember seeing a video. I think it was a gentleman who was using one of those, the foot pedal control for that. Yeah. I think he was out in somewhere like Peru. Yeah. And I think he did that for fun. I think most of his life he'd have been a footballer, because he had a kick like a donkey by the time you finished doing that.
Yeah. So again, the old-fashioned sort of apprenticeship scheme. Leaving school at 15.
Yeah.
You could have if there was an opportunity for an apprenticeship, you could be painting and decorating, carpentry, plastering, bricklaying, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to get an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And from there, then you were taught
a trade
and how to use machinery safely, and go from there. And then, of course,
with the workshop, it took a couple of goes, didn't it, for us to really. I mean, we're still improving on everything and anything we do. But it took us a few goes to get the right scroll saw to suit us, didn't it? Because
you're never at the top of the mountain. I'm afraid you're always, when you're in our situation.
There's always something, isn't there?
You're always climbing the mountain.
Absolutely. And but I remember the first scroll saw you had. It was they're very popular actually. It was a Delta.
Well, there it is. There's the coping saw.
As the coping saw. So, well, that's the coping saw we used. I was thinking the scroll saw. The first scroll saw I remember you having was a Delta.
It was a Delta, was it?
I'm pretty sure it was.
Right.
And you had terrible problems with it, where you found that the blades drifted.
Yeah.
And it was then you came into contact through a school, wasn't it, with the Hegner?
That's right. Yeah.
And then it went on from.
Yeah, it was your school. It was because I used to do wood.
But if you explain that, and I'll come back 2 seconds. Do you want to check that over for me? And if you explain about how you first came over to Hegner,
We came across the Hegner, and I can have a look now. See what he's done here. Oh boys, yeah, I could go over that there, but I won't. It's so we had the Hegner, and
how's it looking?
yeah, it's okay.
Yeah?
Yeah, I said it's wonderful there.
There we are. If you want to pick out the clock movement from there.
I told everybody it was rubbish, but there we are.
Rubbish. Oh, there we are. My work's been called worse recently on YouTube, much to my amusement.
Yeah.
I think that's another issue, isn't it, as well? Worth looking at, because feedback. There's an interesting subject for us to talk about briefly. How to react to feedback, because it could be quite. I can imagine it can be quite off-putting. But just remember, when it comes to feedback, I tend to be of an attitude that you shouldn't really. You should try and stay sort of even keel if you can. You don't get too high. You don't get too low.
You know how some of the first things that you made in the woodworking class, right?
Yeah.
At 11, 12-year-old.
Okay.
A teapot stand.
Yeah.
Right? A simple teapot stand. And all it was, a tea halving.
Yeah.
Right? With 2 bits of pine.
Yeah.
And then a little piece of ply on the top.
Yeah.
And you know, you paid then for that, perhaps about 10 pence or something like that at the time. You took it home, and your parents would use that as a little teapot stand. It gave you, it gave you a little bit
sense of achievement.
A sense of achievement, especially as you've been sent to this school as a failure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I know I'm harping on about it, but that's what you were told. You can't sort of shy away from it. It's a system that was unfortunately still in certain parts of our country. It's still adopted. It's still used.
Yeah.
We still have grammar schools. What a blinking terrible.
But not what else. Coming back to it, feedback. Yeah, I always think that it's one of those things where, when you get positive feedback, I always think you shouldn't get too high about it. And when you get negative feedback, I certainly think you shouldn't take that
Sorry, I diverged
too seriously. No, not
the
at all.
teapot stand was the one.
Yeah.
You could make a clothes horse, right? Today you have a clothes horse for drying the clothes. Apart from the fact they're not going to let us have coal fires any longer. That's the next little.
Did you pick up the clock face for me?
Thing that so you can make a clothes horse out of wood, whereas today, of course, they're plastic, they're metal covered in plastic, and you could make an ottoman,
Yeah.
for blankets and things like that. There were practical things that you were given to make. Another favourite was a bedside cabinet, and you'd use reconstituted desks.
Yeah.
So you'd be using oak, maybe. So you'd be recycling it. Of course, recycling. Of course, it was a new thing.
That's right.
You know, we were recycling in the woodwork class 60 years ago. But they've just discovered recycling.
It's because there might be a bit of money in it also.
Yeah. So those were the things you made, and it gave you a sense of achievement, especially after being told you were a failure. Like, so
It's a bit of a tight squeeze at the moment, this one.
Well, we got a drum sander.
But what we'll do,
We got the
just to
drum
give you an
sander.
idea, it's a little bit, I've put it in a little bit skewed. But it's just to give you an idea that is how our finished clock is roughly going to look. Yeah, and it gives you an idea. Simple little Celtic clock. Next challenge is to get it back out of there. Oh, it is coming out.
Well, that was the other thing we had in the woodworking class in the secondary modern school. We had lathes.
Yeah.
So
So you could do a bit of wood turning.
So you did a bit of wood turning, and of course you were also then being geared to
There we are.
engineering work as well.
And that's what we do. So there we are. Right. I think that's us done for now. That's a simple little Celtic clock surround. What we do, as I said, we got an oscillating sander where we'll sand that all around, just make the hole a little bit bigger, just to make that clock fit in there a little bit more easy. Fun little projects. We've got to sand the back of that.
into there to show that.
Yeah, we could try and just...
Although you better not, because it's a bit chaotic.
Is it? Oh, another time. You'll see it. I've got a demonstration coming up. Where...
Yeah.
There you go.
That's the
Let's show Thomas Woodcarver.
that'll go in there, and then we'll it'll be on a machine. It will, and that'll go spin round, and it'll be a little bit larger then, just to make that clock fit in better.
We try and swing that clock around. There we are.
Of course, a bright light, Dave.
It is, isn't it?
Oh,
That's my new light. That is.
yeah,
That's my brand new light.
yeah. So that'll be put on our machine. Quite a useful one, Dave. I don't know whether you've ever done this machine.
I've used it in a couple of demonstrations,
Yeah.
and I've actually I used it in one of the videos where I was talking about other kit that we've got in the workshop.
And that's a nice bit of mahogany now.
Yeah,
That'll
nice.
come up nice.
Well,
nice
we've got a
little-
sand. There's a bit of super glue on the back, so we'll sand that off. But it's
Yeah.
a nice, simple little clock design that we do.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's been interesting. Hopefully, you've enjoyed seeing that one being made. Hope you all have a good week. And as always, we'll be back with more videos. Anyone as well watching it on the playback, any questions, feel free to ask us, any comments.
We'll say yucky da. Good health.
Just a few things in it. The absolute effort from Di to keep Thomas on track is amazing. You've met us as my wife, you've met us to chat still up. Yeah, absolutely. I never like coral draw, pen and paper locks it into your mind. Yes, spot on. Thanks, Daniel, as well. Thanks to the carver, and we hope you all have a great week. Thanks again. All the best.
All the best.